All right, so good evening, everyone. So today we're going to sort of like cover specifically this entire thing. I think can you see the SLS lesson? Can Okay, so if you can't see the SLS lesson, you just tell me. You can speak to the mic. Okay, so one of the most important thing specifically that we are looking at is about globalization. So later on, I'm going to give you like a big understanding or a big recap of what is globalization per se. But prior to that, what I want to go through is you literally need to know what is expected of you for this particular chapter. Okay, when I talk about this particular chapter, I'm talking about specifically what to study, and if let's say it is tested in the O level, what are the type of questions to look up. So you have the cybersecurity and you also have terrorism. So for those of you who are in the other class, you should be assigned this lesson and you should be looking at this lesson specifically. Okay, all right. So if you look at the lesson, one of the most important things is about reading for your understanding. Okay, there are many challenges that's facing the world right now, and one of the big challenges that we're looking at is actually about cybersecurity as well as terrorism. Okay, so in this lesson, which I hope you have gone through the lesson, you would have actually found out a little bit about what is the internal and external challenges of a country. Okay, and all this is the result of actually globalization. Okay, and one of the most important aspects is this thing called cyber security. So for this chapter, okay, you are looking at two aspects of globalization, or how globalization has impacted security. One aspect is cybersecurity, the other aspect is actually terrorism. Okay, and if you had gone through all the lessons, I would have given you a very detailed, like what is cybersecurity, what is the impact of cybersecurity. And I really hope that when you look through all the videos, in social studies, videos as well as visuals are good examples for you. Okay, and when you look at later on, when you look at SRQ 6 and SRQ 7, the information or the examples that you get are from things that is being shown here. So you need to go through so that you actually have some sort of content. Okay, now you remember that social studies is a subject that you are able to use your own knowledge and apply it. But I think specifically for mid-year, one of your main issues that we were looking at is really because some of you couldn't use the example and link it up. So that is why I've given you a sample, and then later on we look at the sample. Okay, and specifically, okay, this is the part. And when you look at globalization, if you remember, impact of globalization, economic impact, as well as the cultural impact, a lot of the impact will deal with mostly just three challenges. So that means when you are doing this kind of paper, what you need to look, or this kind of topic, what you need to really focus on is, okay, what happens to a country, what happens to a business, what happens to an individual. So you must always have that sort of mindset. And if you look very carefully, a lot of the strategies will also come from a country strategy, the perspective of an MNC, or even an individual. So you must always train your minds when you're answering the question to always see it either perspective-wise, whether it is the government, the community, the individual. And community we can also include businesses or MNCs part of community as well. Okay, not only just schools or different kind of NGO or institutions. Okay, so these are all the different impacts. Okay, I'm not going to go through content this part, okay, because I think this is something that you have to go and read on your own. Okay, but what is important later is, after all these things, right, what is the most important thing for this topic? Okay, so because I've divided such that there are challenges to the countries, there are challenges to businesses, specifically because when we talk about cybersecurity, definitely the impact towards companies would actually really, really matter. Okay, and I asked some of you this kind of questions, right? If you are a big MNC, what would be your area of concern? So if you can see some of your friends answer, okay, so let me just like take a look at this. So Jaden, for example, says that, okay, data is one of the biggest concern. And the reason is because like, for example, data is really your confidential information, you know, and in some companies, data, you sell data. So like what he said, okay, there are a lot of money, for example, that are used to pay for fees to stop the cyber attacks. You're right. Okay. And companies are concerned because once you have a cyber attack, in terms of your businesses, people don't trust you anymore. Okay. So these are some of the questions and some of the answers that you've given me. So do look at your friends' answers. For my class, I'm going to collate all the answers and we are going to use it as part of our note of our revision and our notes. Okay. Now, this is very important because most of the time questions, and if you look at SRQ question from Ganin Singh as well as Danyan, they ask you as an individual, what can you do? Okay, so they always ask you from a perspective of a student. Okay, sometimes they ask you to look, oh, as the perspective of a government, what can you do? So if you're a student, what is the personal impact that cybersecurity can do to you? Okay, and specifically it's really about your own data. It's really about how you manage all these cybersecurity issues. Okay, and if your handphone is being hacked or your credit card is being hacked or your bank account is being hacked, so what is the impact to you? Of course, there is fear, there is trust issues, you know, all those kind of things. So let's take a look at some of your friends' answer. What is it that they fear the most? Some of them, okay, like Rebecca here says impersonation, correct, okay? Things especially that is confidential will be now be up in the open, in the cloud or in any server, and they can use this confidential information to use it at the hacker's advantage. So this is one of the impact. Yes, you're right. Navita said that personal information may be exposed, correct? And you need to, that is why we always have to encrypt our passwords. Okay, you cannot have your birthday, you cannot have your favorite color or whatever. It's too easy for the hackers to hack. All right. Okay, Nolene says, so it's a lot of it is really about information. Very good. Okay, so again, I will collate all your answers because these are very good answers when we do SRQ. All right, now moving on. Okay, so now the next part is the solution. Now, this is the most important bit. Okay, okay, wait, just check in. Everybody can see the SLS lesson. I'm not just talking to myself, right? Can I have a thumbs up if you can see the SLS lesson? Everybody thumbs up, please. Okay, thank you. So like thinking I'm talking to myself. Okay, all right. So next part is about managing cybersecurity challenges, right? So this is the part where a lot of you will sort of falter or may not have enough ideas because, you know, I wouldn't know what will happen from a government's perspective. I know and individually what I can do, but from a government's perspective, what can I do, or a business perspective, because your general knowledge may not be there and may not be enough for you to actually explain. So this is the part where whether you like it or whether you don't like it, you need to be exposed to the different strategies or the different solutions. So you need, what I'm trying to tell you is you need the content. You really, really need the content because with no content, it is very hard to answer this question without the examples. Okay. Later on, when we look back at how we mark SRQ, you still need examples. Even though you describe something, examples are very important. Okay. So that is why I gave you sort of like a case study here, and I wanted you to sort of take a look at it. And if you were hired by the government, okay, and we have a lot of cybersecurity companies actually that they actually look at the different issues and the different things, and they actually help the government. Okay, so and this has happened, you know, where our Sing Health was actually attacked, and I hope you did or you have actually read or watched this particular video. Okay, very, very interesting that the hackers hacked and a lot of our personal what do I call that, personal health data is being exposed. I really do not know. Okay, so how do you increase public awareness and how do we ensure that a large scale cyber attack will not happen? Okay, quite hard because, you know, information is so out there in the cloud system, in everywhere. Okay, but my question to you was, okay, one way to increase public awareness and how this strategy is effective. And some of you submitted very good answers. Later on, I've already done the collation already. Okay, so let's take a look at some of your friends. Okay, so Afiq, for example, says to expose basic information of people that will not compromise their safety to the public. Okay, so this is an interesting answer. That means, I think I saw Afiq in the group. Afiq, you're saying that you expose basic information. Okay, actually right now basic information is even guarded, right? In terms of your IC, you're not supposed to actually disclose your IC or even your handphone number. So for this, if let's say this was an SRQ, this answer would actually be wrong. Okay, this is not it is an answer, but it is not the best answer. To increase public awareness, there's actually only a few ways. One is through education and one is through social media. Okay, so if you give examples that one is social media and one is education, it is considered as public awareness. Okay, so be very careful. So you don't think that just because I give two examples, oh, I increase public awareness through social media, I increase public awareness through education. That is the same thing, it's the same example. So you may not even get the marks that is, for example, that is the 7th mark. Okay, I'll explain in a while later with your friend's answer. Okay, wait, let me delete this part. Okay, let's look at one more. Okay, this is quite interesting. Okay, you're trying to sort of raise awareness by having games. Okay, so this is really about community. This is really about reaching out. This is the C, the community approach, the CC's approach, reaching out to the normal people and the public. Possible. Okay, one more. Free lessons to educate the public about cybersecurity. I think we have that in terms of advertisements, in terms of posters, in terms of what we're studying in school. So possible, okay? But what is important is this, the one it's in yellow. Now, even though you can come up with a strategy or a solution, you need to explain. So if I have education that is given to everyone, how will this be effective? So I think, Jenny, you answered correctly. People will have a deeper knowledge about cybersecurity and they are more aware. So the idea about awareness is there. Okay, so this part is quite important, the awareness bit and everything. Okay, so let me just now go to the next bit. Okay, I think we're done with this. Okay, so let me stop the sharing first. Okay, so okay, let's check. Can you guys see this? If you guys can see this, can I have a thumbs up from everyone? So that I know. Okay, thank you, Umara. The rest of you can see, okay, all right, good. Okay, there's still some of you who's coming in. Okay, all right, so this was one of the many ways of actually increasing public awareness towards cybersecurity. Okay, so what I've done is actually I've sort of screenshot your friends' answers. Okay, okay, so let's take a look at, I'm going to look at Dave's answer. Now, if this was an example that he did, okay, the question, right? One way to increase public awareness towards cybersecurity is through social media. Correct? It's a good, or it's a correct example. Okay, and it will educate. So the strategy of how it will be effective, it will educate most people, as most people use social media nowadays. Now, if you were to write this, okay, and if this was a link, all right, it may not be the best link. Okay, when you educate most people, as most people use social media nowadays, it doesn't talk about cybersecurity, right? So when you talk about this, it will educate most people on how to protect themselves, or protect their personal information. So that will be more important because we are looking at specifically how to answer a question. So you must remember, when I have questions like this, when I have questions like how will this strategy be effective, I am actually looking at the link. Okay, now most of you, as I look across specifically for your SRQ answers, there were a lot of common mistakes, and the common mistakes was, one of it is your link, using example and the link. So there is this big gap still, which I think is you need to lessen, or you need to actually close that gap by understanding how the example actually will help you to answer it. Okay, so this is, I would say he can improve on it. Okay, all right, now moving on. I think for some of you, I've given you that Microsoft Word, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, as you can see, right? If you can't see, please tell me. Okay, so we are looking at this. Okay, we're looking at Ganin Singh. For those of you who have printed the paper, Ganin Singh paper, or for those of you who did not print, it's okay, you can take a look at this copy. But I think I've given both the classes the Microsoft Word. So what you can do is you can sort of, if you're using a computer or whatever, is to just toggle it and highlight certain things. Okay, so we're going to look at the Ganin Singh paper first. Okay, so this is specifically how you answer questions, right? Okay, this is how you will look at answering the questions. Okay, let me just stop share for a while because I want to show you how you answer, or what are the marks that you need to get. Okay, so I'm gonna share this first. Okay, then you can see this. All right, so when you have A questions, okay, you can actually refer to your Microsoft Word that I just gave before the lesson started. Okay, now, okay, it doesn't matter what is the question, but what matters is the level of descriptor. Okay, now when you describe a topic, it is definitely 1 mark. You can see that is 1 mark. Okay, when you identify any strategies, it is specifically 3 marks for describing, 4 marks for describing 2 reasons. Now, when I say describe literally means just examples. Okay, now if in the exam O level, when you have no time, and please remember that when it's O level, you should only be spending about maximum of 40 minutes on SRQ, maximum. Okay, so be strategic about it. So you can see that just by plain description of 2 reasons, you are able to get 4 marks already, and 4 out of 7 is a passing grade for SRQ. Our aim out of literally 15 for SRQ is for you to get 10 and above. Okay, of course, the higher the better, but let's get 10 first. Okay, 10, and we aim for 25 specifically for our source-based question, and it's already at 35. All right. Now, if you look at level 3 is about explaining. So when you talk about explaining and you look very, very carefully, right, I'm very sure your teachers have told you again and again, award 5 to 6 marks for explaining 1 reason. So what you need to do in O level, because of time management, right, you don't need to write both the strategies. If you can write a very good strategy, you can see that you already get 6 marks, or 6 to 7 marks for explaining 2 reasons. If you were to spend a bit more time to think through the answers, you would already get a 6 marks. So these are things that you have to be careful, and I think it is very, very useful for you to know for you to just write 1 very good answer. Okay, there's no point in you actually answering so much and you cannot finish your other SRQ 7. Okay, so I'm going to show you back to your friend's sample. Okay, so this is Ganin Singh. I hope you can see the screen. All right, so when we talk about Ganin Singh's paper specifically, it is about cybersecurity. Okay, now first things first, when you have a source-based, you have an SRQ, you'll be looking at all the extracts. You'll be looking at extracts 1, you'll be looking at extracts 2, you'll be looking at extracts 3. And if you look very carefully, extracts 1 is on cybersecurity. Okay, if you look at extracts 1, it is on cybersecurity. Okay, and extracts 2 is on terrorism, which we will cover in a bit. Okay, just look at extracts 1 first. Okay, so just make sure that once you identify your different extracts are supposed to Remember, it's supposed to just trigger your examples or trigger your knowledge. Okay, and here it actually talks about how cybersecurity is on the rise, or cybercrime, sorry, is on the rise. You can see here, cybercrime. Okay, and it says here that 7 in 10 respondents agreed that every individual has a role to play. So here straight away, you know that we are looking at the role of individuals. Agree? All right. And then moving on, it says here, if you look very carefully here, many Singaporeans were unaware of proper cybersecurity practices. So as you are reading this, you really have no time to reread. So what you do is please annotate. Please annotate. If I were to look at your question paper, which I have done, okay, which I have done, and look at your question paper, some of your question papers are very, very clean. Okay, so I don't get it. Okay, you need, as you are annotating, you are unpacking. And when you are unpacking, you are thinking. So take time to just, like scribble here a bit to just make sure that you plan first. I think that is very important, okay, for you to write well. Right, now let's look at the question. The question is saying that, in your opinion, how can individuals protect themselves from cybersecurity threats? Okay, using 2 strategies. So now you can have a few strategies, no worries. Okay, you can try to do 2 strategies, but I want you to focus on this. It says here, individuals. In your mid-year, there were a lot of you who made this error, and I want you to listen very well, okay? If you cannot remember a lot of things from today's session, but please remember this. When I say Singaporeans, okay, does it include the government? Does it include the individual? Is it the community? So a lot of you, okay, you may not know your marks yet, but a lot of you, please don't be shocked that in your SRQA, you actually get 1 mark, which is just the identification. And the reason why you get your 1 mark is because straight away you wrote about education. And education is actually by the government. And that's the reason why any of the strategy, if I'm asking for just Singaporeans, you must look at it at individuals' perspective, or you can take a look at community perspective. So this was the issue with your SRQA. And a lot of you who got 50-something or the 40-something, that range, right? When you realize your SRQ, it is because of this reason. Your answers were correct, but you identified the wrong strategy. So I want you to be very careful, okay? We didn't expect you to not know, because we would have expected you to read the question carefully. So when you talk about Singaporeans, it cannot be government, okay? It only has to be either the individual perspective or the community perspective. I think this is something that you need to pay attention to. So in this question, in your opinion, how can individuals protect themselves from cybersecurity? It is just looking at yourself as well as your actions. Okay, so let's take a look at the answers. One of your friends' answer. Okay, this is one of your friends' answer. I've given to you in soft copy in Microsoft Word. Okay, so you can make some annotations if you have it, okay, on your computer. You can just underline certain things. Okay, so one way that individuals can protect themselves would be to be cautious. So this is an action. Okay, so those of you can highlight cautious. It is a cautious attempt when creating passwords. So this is a strategy because this is an action that an individual can take. Agree? So that means what? I am cautious. So because I am cautious, how am I cautious? Let's look at the example. So the example will be in yellow. Okay, creating passwords, ensuring that the websites that I go are reliable. That means I check on the validity of the website. Okay, and then it says here, when creating passwords, individual have to ensure that it is strong. Okay, password consists of, so all these things here. Okay, so this is the what. Okay, all these things is the how. What is the how? How is examples. Okay, how is the examples? Agree? Okay, now let's see whether this particular answer has the link. Okay, So let's see how many examples they have. Creating password, using symbols, ensure that websites they visit are trustable, taking note of the log beside the website link, very good, okay? Now, take a look at the link. Hence, if individuals take note of such small measures, they can protect themselves from cybersecurity threats. You have a very good what, you have a very good how, but the link here is an okay link, okay, but it is, you can do better. So for this particular paragraph, if I were to give the marks, I would actually give it a 5 marks, a level 3, 5 marks, because you have the what, you have the how. But what is important here is specifically, hence if individuals take note of such small measures, they can protect themselves from cybersecurity threats. It is really about what is these small measures. Okay, so if individuals are more cautious, they have all these examples and they take note of such measures, they can change their behavior, and behavior drives practices, right? So they change their behavior, they change the way they surf the internet, all these kind of things, then it will definitely be a better answer. Slightly need a little bit of improvement. Okay, so specifically for this particular question, I think very good examples, but the link could have been stronger. So this is a 5 marks. This is definitely a first paragraph is a level 3, 5 marks. Okay, now let's take a look at the other one. Is another way that individuals can protect themselves from cybersecurity threats would be for them to attend talks about cybersecurity threats. Okay, yep, I agree. I don't know whether you all have signed up for any cybersecurity threat, but yes, it is possible. Okay, so this one, oops, sorry. So this one again is the it's the what. Okay, so can you see that this is a very clear what here? Okay, this one is using education, which can be from the government or from NGOs, but it is actually using to the individual perspective. Can you see this? Okay, so I am using the individual perspective here. Okay, so you're right. By attending this talk, individuals will be able to understand what some cybersecurity threats are, and then after that, they apply it. Okay, apply it and prevent it. Okay, let's look. Using the knowledge gained from these talks, they will be more wary. Okay, very good. The one in blue is my link. Using the knowledge gained from these talks, they will be more wary about such threats and take preventive measures to ensure that they are safe. This is a very good link. Okay, that means I go to a talk, I use the knowledge I use from that talk or whatever seminar, and I apply it. So this is about application here. This is applying. Correct? Because I take that and I learn it and I am now very wary. So I have gained something. And this application is actually your link. Okay, so I thought that this is a better paragraph. So if the first paragraph was a level 3, 5, okay, this paragraph, because it's a much better paragraph, I would give it a level 3, 6 marks. Okay, so this is actually a 6 out of 7. Okay, because the first paragraph I thought this person needed a little bit more help. Okay, Ken? All right, so this is how, for example, in the mid-year or as well as O-level, when we marked, okay, we always look at very simple things. We look at your, when I look at your script, I'm looking at your what? I am looking at whether your examples, good examples, are examples that I can, that you can apply. The examples are logic, okay? And from the examples, how do you link it? I think this is the one that you guys need to work on, okay? Now, another question, if you have any questions, just try to type, check in the chat box, okay? I can answer it later on. But what is important is how, you know, like how do I improve? I think some of the students were asking me, how do I improve in my writing? Now, writing, if you see that it is a process, the more you write, the better your or the sharper actually your argument is. It is almost, social studies is almost like an argumentative English essay. And if you can do that well, you can transfer specifically the skills that is needed to actually use it in your writing. Okay, be it actually even mother tongue also. Okay, so you must always take note whether you're using peel or whether you're using what, how, why, whatever technique that you're using, as long as you are able to make a very clear connection from examples to link, that is where you get your marks. Okay, all right. For those of you who just came in, we are still doing a little bit on cybersecurity, and I think we are almost done with this Ganin Singh question. Okay, let me just take a look at Danyan. Okay, so Danyan is on terrorism, which I will now take a look at terrorism. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take a look at the SLS lesson. So those of you who have the SLS lesson, you can also switch it on. We are looking at the terrorism SLS lesson. I'm not sure whether the other class you have completed your terrorism SLS lesson. Please do it, okay, because this is the content that you need. Okay, by the way, this particular chapter, which is the last chapter of social studies, is what we call the common last topic, which means that if SEAB says, okay, common last topic is applicable for 2021 social studies paper, this topic will not be tested in the O-level. But as of now, which is 4th of June, no news from SEAB, which is the organization or the branch or the ministry branch that actually looks at national exam. I would definitely tell you if, let's say, you know, this is not going to be tested for O-level. Like last year, because of COVID and because of circuit breaker, this entire topic was not tested. So we'll see. Okay, hopefully things gets better lah. Okay, and it's okay to learn one more chapter rather than just to be stuck as circuit breaker. All right. Okay, now moving on. We talk about terrorism. Okay, I have actually sort of unpack all of your answers here. So for those of you who have not done this, please go and do it. Okay, because if not, if you please look at the Zoom recording again, because you know it's no point in you listening but you don't even know the content. All right, you need the content. Okay, so as I was saying, you know, what is this terrorism? So again, we're talking about threats, we're talking about globalization and how it affects security. Now, globalization affects security in so many ways, but for social studies and for what you are studying, you are only going to look at two things. One is cyber security, the other one is terrorism. Okay, so for terrorism, I think it is not new. Okay, so in the lesson itself, there are certain things that later on I'll just go through with you guys. Okay, it is quite complex and complicated. So I'm going to answer some of your questions that you ask from my class. So there are there's a lot of definitions of terrorism. I was quite happy that you guys managed to actually look at the definition. Okay. So there's no specific one definition. I think Nolene was asking me, I think some of them were also asking me, like, is there a definition for terrorism? Do I need to memorize what's terrorism? No, you don't have to memorize what's terrorism. You need to know what is the impact of it. Of course, you need to have a rough idea what's terrorism, but terrorism is specifically about violence. Okay, and who's a terrorist? Anyone who uses terror or violence to their own advantage. So then the question is, what's the difference between an armed robbery and a terrorist? Okay, now an armed robbery, the motive is usually personal motive, is usually economic motive, whereas in a terrorism, and specifically transnational terrorism, okay, later on remind me to explain to you that there's a difference. What is the difference of terrorism and transnational terrorism? It is really a lot of the times politically motivated. So a lot of you were asking me, like, why did you want to be terrorists? Why is it that they know that they're going to be dead but still continue to be terrorists? Like, why? A lot of it is the belief system. Okay, and it is very unfortunate that for in the 21st century, some of these terrorists are associated with a single religion, which is unfortunately Islam. All right, and they are actually one of many of them who are terrorists. They are like dangerous groups, all those kind of things. Okay, so very unfortunate though. All right. So this is the one. So what is terrorism? Terrorism is a complex security challenge. Okay, it is really about going beyond the borders. Now, what is transnational terrorism? And this is the one where globalization comes in. Now, because remember we talked about globalization, how globalization is driven by three things. transport, technology, okay, transport technology, as well as specifically MNCs lah, right? Okay, but obviously this is not an MNCs, but two things that drives globalization, which is technology as well as transport, also helps to flourish terrorism, okay? So the very fact that transnational terrorism is so, it can be found in every pockets of the continent, okay, or maybe except for Greenland or some of the countries, it is because of what globalization does. Okay, it makes it easier. Okay, so this is very important for you to take note. Why? Why globalization helps to fuel or helps to improve transnational terrorism is also because it is very easy to coordinate. So even though my headquarters or my main cell is in Middle East or in somewhere in let's say, for example, okay, I'm just being very candid here, somewhere in country X, okay, I'm able to transmit this knowledge of very skewed religious belief to everywhere in the world. I just record myself and then I just put it up, upload it on YouTube, or I record myself and I give it to people who are really very extremists. Okay, so this is how terrorism can actually spread, and it's really about the belief. Okay. Okay, I asked you guys how concerned you are about transnational terrorism. Very good. Okay, most of you are concerned, some of you are not concerned. Okay, so the reason why we practiced lockdown a few years ago, and you can use lockdown as an example of how education in school. So you see, all these experiences is an example to you when you write, for example, your SRQ. Okay, so for this part, they actually ask you, I ask you, okay, how concerned are you? Some of you, you're very concerned. Some of you are not so concerned because I think you have very great faith in the government. Very good, okay. But at the same time, we cannot take it for granted. Okay. All right. So let me move on to the next activity. I think for the next activity, it's just some very biased, very satire kind of videos. Okay, go and watch it if you have not watched. Okay, the other one is about motivation. I think some of you were asking me like, what motivates them? So it is either religion that motivates them. It could be about money. It could also be about the acceptance, you see. The very fact that, I am always been very different from my peers. And then I do not know how to handle all this emotion or all this anger sometimes, okay? And I resonate, or that means I sort of see that, oh, this particular group, like same wavelength like me, like also angry, that kind of thing. And I decided to join them. So these are things which motivates people to join terrorism, okay? Or even any belief that fundamentally hinges on violence. Now, is terrorism only of a certain religion? Like, for example, Islam? Not necessarily. There are also terrorists that are non-Islamic or non-Muslim. So one of it is actually this Ashahara cult. Okay, a cult can also be a terrorist because this particular, if you have seen the video, they have taken or they have actually spread poisonous gas in the subway, in the train. So their intention is also to kill people. So this is also a terrorist example. The other one is from Sri Lanka. Okay, and another example, a very popular example in the 1960s was actually the Irish Republican Army. So what I'm trying to tell you is that there are many examples of terrorists. It just so happened that in the 21st century, terrorists who belongs or who champions apparently Islamic beliefs are the one that is always on our TV. Okay, now where do the terrorists get their money? All of this revenue. Okay, some of them are born rich, some of them get it through illegal methods. Okay, now moving on. These are very good examples. So when you write examples in your SRQ, take note. Please take note. Learn at least one of the example. And the most very important example is actually your number one example, which is the 9/11 that happened in America that literally triggered the entire world. Because what happens is there will always be an impact. So you have these terrorist groups, right? And terrorist examples of transnational terrorism. So what is then the impact? And the impact is about what the government or how the government responds. So this is very important. So you need to know an example. Just learn one very good example, it should be enough, or one or two examples, literally for your O level. You don't have to memorize every terrorist event or terrorist bombing. You don't need, okay? But just remember one out of these four, just remember one or two. Okay, so if you have not watched the video, go and watch the video, go and find out about some of this, and then you remember this example. Okay, because as you are reading the example, then you realize that, oh, there's a lot of impact that's happening, right? There is the how the government responds to it. So at the time when America was being attacked, for example, obviously the response was, I am going to retaliate, I'm going to find the person that did it, and I am going to bomb them, I'm going to fight them, those kind of things. So at that time, George, so sorry, oh my God, can't think of it now. Okay, was it Bush? Yes, it was Bush's son, George Bush Jr. Okay, literally went to have or proclaim that it is a war against America. Okay, so these are things that that the government did. Okay, and there was a lot of money that was pumped into it. Because another question is, what's the impact, right? What's the economic impact of transnational terrorism? The other one is about the Paris bombs. Okay, so what's the impact of the Paris bombs? Literally after that relationship, there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of tension between people who were of a certain religion at that time that symbolized this terrorist, and they were facing a lot of issues and a lot of problems. Okay, so this is one aspect of social impact of transnational terrorism. Okay, same thing with this. Okay, for the Christchurch, which is 2019, some of you have seen the video. One of the biggest impacts, definitely social impact, is really about the loss of lives. Okay, the loss of specifically innocent lives that is destroyed. Okay. Now the other thing that you need to know. Okay, this is the one that we'll go through in a bit. Okay, list 3 possible impacts, whether it's political impacts, whether it's economic impact, and whether it is social impact. So usually the O level may ask you, and then if let's say this was an SRQ 7, one of the things that they will ask you is, okay, out of these 3 impact, weigh which one is the most crucial, or which one is which impact is the worst impact, okay, as part of balancing. So they can ask you this kind of question. So that's why I put in this question. Okay, how do countries respond then to transnational terrorism? I ask you in this activity, which is activity 5, I asked about, okay, what is your understanding about government impact, or what is your understanding about impact towards world organization? So later on, we'll take a look at the answers. Okay. Then, okay, so then after I know what is the impact, I'm going to look at the responses towards transnational terrorism. What are the responses? And the responses is the PPR. I couldn't think of an acronym. Please go and find yourself a very funny acronym that you can remember. So we know that the impact is political, economic, and social. So what is then our response? So response is the strategy, to stop transnational terrorism. And if you think very carefully, it's quite impossible to stop transnational terrorism, specifically because as an individual, what can you do? Okay, as a government, maybe they can do a bit more. As a community, what can you do? So some of the questions are really tough because when I look at previous papers or other schools papers, other prelims papers, they were asking as an individual, how can you respond to transnational terrorism, right? It is something that's beyond us, right? So there are possibilities. Okay, it goes back again to education. It goes back again to ensuring that, I think some of you wrote about inclusiveness. Okay, we make sure that the other people don't feel left out, because once they feel left out, they feel upset, they feel angry, and when people are angry, you know, they can join all these extremist groups. So you must make that connection. Okay, so please go and read what is the meaning of preventive, what is the meaning of protective, what is the meaning of responsive. Okay, so I've put some examples there. Okay, the only thing that I want you to remember is, okay, when we talk about preventive, this one, preventive is to deter. What is the meaning of to deter? To deter is to stop, it from even happening. So to deter is, how do I say, before even there are transnational terrorism issues or security breaches, we deter it first. Okay, that means we ensure that in our country, we actually make sure that we are prepared. So to deter is really to prepare. Okay, and when you talk about preparation, it is some examples you must know. Okay, because this content is so scope that you really need that knowledge, you need to know this. Okay, you need to know at least one or two examples. There is no way out, literally. Okay, because unless you guys are like, high security people, or you in your free time, you're very interested in all this, but usually just remember some of these examples. Okay, so the examples are government preventive border control, collaborating with other countries, so that you sort of like deter it, you prevent it even from happening. Okay, when you collaborate with other countries, you get information and you can stop the terrorists, any terrorist groups, or any terrorist attacks from happening. Okay, another example is total defense. Okay, it is about the mindset. It is about how we bond as a country, and how we make sure that no matter what the terrorist groups try to incite fear, that means try to make people so scared of the others, because we are together, and there is this thing called total defense against the mindset, defense against psychological defense. It can help us overcome the problem of transnational terrorism. Okay, so I've given you some examples. This is a part. Okay, build a strong, secure, cohesive Singapore. Okay, another one is about protective. So protective and preventive is the same. Okay, that means you need to prevent first. If prevention is not enough, you add on as a protection. Okay, so protection, that means there is more actions to it. There is more, how do I say, more things that the government needs to put. Okay, because it's quite hard for an individual or the community to stop transnational terrorism, right? I was telling you, right? So what you really need is really about the extra measures, okay? Because I need to protect. So what are the extra measures? The extra measures is surveillance. So if you have seen in those of you who live in HDB blocks, there is a bit more cameras, there is a bit more surveillance cameras everywhere, and the idea is to ensure that people are aware that people are protected lah. Okay, it can be a double-edged sword. And this is the one. When I have more surveillance camera, it feels that I'm being watched. But at the same time, you need all this surveillance camera because it is easier in the event that there is a terrorist attack. People can respond faster, or people can know where to start faster. I think these are the things that you need to take note of. Okay, higher surveillance, new laws. All right. This is the one. Literally that you have a lot more of body scannings in the airports. Okay, the screening in the airports are very tight. In some countries, it is literally you have to strip, or you have to go through a camera many times. Okay, so this is important, but at the same time, there is a trade-off. If you remember from issue 1, we talked about trade-off. Trade-off means, what does trade-off mean? Trade-off literally means, okay, if I do this, something is going to be missing, or something will lack. So if I go through this security check, what am I losing? I'm losing actually my privacy. And to some people, it is a violation of their privacy. So some people believe that, all these things because the government is trying to check on you. But actually, if you think about it, it is about safety lah. It's about safety. So some people believe in the human rights more than others. Okay. The other thing, which is this is contentious, because if you are, if you are seen to be a potential terrorist, or you have a terrorist connection, the Singapore government, as well as I think in some governments like the US, they actually have a law. For ours is because we have this ICA law, ISD law, okay, where we actually can just take people without any trial, and we can put them, or we can consider them as a threat to national interests. And actually, this has been ongoing since the 1960s, where if you remember your Sec 2 history, we talk about communism, right? We talk about how the communist threat, so same thing, it has happened. Now, the problem is while we can detain them, that means it really, it's very fast. It's a fast game thing. Okay, I know you're a terrorist, pop, I just take you. No questions asked. But there could also be possibilities where when I detain someone, they're really not a terrorist, right? And it has happened literally in America. I think in a lot of cases that came out that because of this particular law in America, I mean, they call it the Patriot Law, you're able to detain anyone who just looks like a terrorist, okay? And they go into very harsh conditions in prison. So these are things that we call a trade-off. You want security, but at the same time, what is it that there will be a trade-off about? Okay, now next bit. The last part is responsive. So responsive is after I try to prevent is level 1. I protect with a few measures. So the last part is if really got a terrorist attack, then it is for me to act upon. That means really there is a real terror attack. What can the government do? We're looking at the government's perspective still. Okay, responsive measures is to ensure that we can deal with a lot of these damages or any of these harms. So this is the last resort, lastest resort. Okay, and some of the examples is internal responsive measures. Internally, what we do is we make sure that our security forces, whether it is the army or whether it is the police force or whether it's the SWAT unit, whatever it is, we have contingency plans. That means we are always ready, ever ready, in fact. Okay, I think that is one of their slogan. All right, and we often do a lot of these exercises. So some of these exercises is for preparedness, because we've never really gotten a real case where okay, this is a terrorist attack. Okay, Singapore Flyer gets attacked or something like that. All right, we don't have that. Thankfully, I'm not wishing for it to happen. Okay, but because we have never experienced that, there is also that fear that we're not prepared. So one of the ways for us to ensure that, okay, we are able to respond, because remember, what is this strategy? This strategy is response. In order for us to respond better, what we do is we ensure that there is a lot of exercises. Okay. Now, another example of external, just now was the internal one, right? So external measures is we continue to work with other countries, whether it is the ASEAN countries, whether it is the international countries, United Nations or whatever. We continue to add value because we're very small. Okay, a terrorist attack and an attack, maybe, I don't know, Bukit Timah or something, that's gone, man. Okay, that half, or maybe the only hill that we have, the only vantage point that we have is gone. So we need to always continuously exchange information. All right, so that's it. Okay, I asked you guys a poll, and obviously, all of you actually tell me, or at least about half of the class actually tell me about it being a combination of measures, which is the best answer. Okay, so if this was an essay, correct, which measure is most effective? Is it preventive, protective, responsive? Then can I say that it's actually a combination? Yes, you should say it's a combination, because I don't think that one measure will be effective. All right. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so at the end of this thing, I actually made you guys do this SRQ. I think some of my students have already given in. Now, this is a real test, okay? The Home Affairs Ministry conducted an exercise, and they tested on how people would react, okay? And literally that only 1 in 5 passengers took measures, okay? So again, now, this is interesting because this is exactly what you shouldn't fall trick into. In your opinion, what can be done to increase Singaporeans' awareness? Now, this question is slightly different from, in your opinion, what can Singaporeans do? You get it? Different, huh? In your opinion, what can be done to increase Singaporeans' awareness? That means you can look at it in terms of whose perspective? Government's perspective, community perspective, individual perspective, can. But if the question, I were to tweak it and I were to say, in your opinion, what can Singaporeans do? You will only, or you can only look at what an individual does. Can? Okay, so be very careful about it. Just look very quickly at some of your friends' answers. So I actually I've actually download, and those of my class, those of you who actually have done or have done this, I will be marking and I'll be giving you some of the comments. Okay. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, so Junie says, I think that all schools can have talks to let students know more about possible security threats. And through school talks, students will be able to share this information and even put into use when there is an emergency without panicking, wrong spelling, of what to do. Okay, the only thing that I would want to just help Junie would be, can you give me a good example of how you share information? So for example, the use of SG Secure. The use of having an emergency bag in the house. Okay, so make sure that you have concrete evidence, concrete examples. So for this, because the examples are not there, even though the link is actually very good, you may be getting between a 3 to a 4, somewhere there. Okay. Okay, so let's do one more. Ishan, daily drills. Okay, one thing is to do daily drills. Wow, every day we get ready, huh? I know Ishan is in the chat group. Okay, one example is that the minister placing smoke cards at 9 different locations to motivate people to notice and report the abnormality. This will encourage Singaporeans to report suspicious things. So what she wants is actually about what? To make sure that everybody is prepared. So what he's doing here, these daily drills, is actually all the examples that he's given. So what is it that needs to be done? It is to increase people's awareness through ensuring that they are always in a responsive mode. Okay, I think that would have been better. All right, so for my class, I will actually give you I will give you all the feedback once I download everything. Okay, not over yet. I'm going to share with you some bits that I was telling you. Okay. All right, so we are here. For those of you who have just sort of entered, we are looking at issue 3 of our SS. Now, issue 3 is the last issue. Now, where did I get this document? Specifically, this document is from SEAB. Okay, so that means you need to really look at the SEAB website. I think I have told all my classes that, be it whatever subjects, it is very important so that you know. Okay, now this is the knowledge that you need. We are at knowledge 4 here. We are here. We are literally doing this. Okay, this is the one that we are doing. Okay, and what is it that you need? What is the skills that you need? You need to make sure that you know what is demonstrative, demonstrate perspective taking. This is the one. This is what we've been talking about. That means we look at what the community does, what the government does, that kind of thing. Agree? Okay. Now, what is all this? You need to know this. This is keywords. That means before O-level, what you should be doing is you should be ensuring that you have a little book of concepts. What is the meaning of globalization? What is the meaning of trade-off? What is the meaning of security? That means even in your answers, you must make sure that, hey, I need to highlight all these key concepts. I think that is very important. Okay? All right, now moving on. What we have done just now is we have looked at how do we respond to tension arising from some security impacts. And we have talked about cyber challenges. We've talked about transnational terrorism. Okay, we talked a little bit about the trade-offs. Okay, and we've talked about vulnerability. Okay, so security and vulnerability. Vulnerable, what is the meaning of vulnerable? The meaning of vulnerable is we can exposed to challenges. Agree? So these are things that you need to take note of. That means these are definitions, just like how formulas, right? You have in maths or in science. So these are like little bit of definitions. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay, so this one is from my students, okay, my class. They were asking, you know, what do you know about terrorism? So a lot of these are just definitions, which I thought was quite good. So that is why I downloaded it. Okay, later on I will give to everyone. Okay, but I thought this was quite interesting. What questions do you have about issues related to terrorism? And the first question was, how does the government plan for government attacks? I think it is about terrorist attacks, right? Unfortunately, they cannot plan. Cannot plan. How do you plan? Because terror attacks are always, Okay, terror attacks are always very sudden, very sudden. You cannot plan and you cannot anticipate. So it's very hard. Okay, now how does the recovery occur for victims of terrorism? I think it is a long process. And the reason is because anyone who's affected by trauma, right, it takes a while. Okay, I think people who suffered from 911, the September, or even the New Zealand bombing, I think they are still shocked, right? Now, how are their attacks devised? How do they come up with the idea to attack others? I'm not a terrorist, but I would say that one of the other things that they actually do is they look at the weak points that a country has. So that is why if you look at all our MRT stations, we don't have dustbins on the platform. Okay, I know I'm a student. You know why? Because when I was a student, I still remember that there were dustbins in the platform. I mean, it's logic, right? Dustbins, right? But that could also be a possibility where a terrorist could actually hide a homemade bomb or any devices. Okay, you don't need to kill so many people as a terrorist. You know, you just have to kill enough people such that the government will respond to your threats. I think that is the idea. Okay, about terrorism. Now, what do they achieve? They achieve whatever that they want, which is, it could be a political thing. It could be some of them try to ask for maybe ransom, possible, okay? But mostly it's political driven. Why is that terrorism? It is a lot of dissatisfaction, okay? A lot of anger, but also political misbelief. What does this mean? What is misbelief? Misbelief is the wrong interpretation of the religion. Okay, now moving on, what is the official definition? There is no official definition, in fact. Okay, there's many definitions, but as long as the definition has something to do with violence, I think that will be it. What causes terrorists to be passionate? Belief. Okay, what happens such that people resort to terrorism and violence to bring across a point? What happens? Terrorist acts happens. Okay, what are the strategies used for this kind of attacks? This is quite interesting. There are many different kinds of strategies. So it can be a chemical strategy. That means I don't use the guns or the bombs or the nukes or whatever. Or it could be warfare. That means I can use poison to poison people, and that could be a terror attack. It's a bioterrorism, if I'm not mistaken, this is the term. Okay, using biology to strike terror. What the terrorists gain from this? Recognition, fame, okay, no lah, right? They get to spread their belief. They get, okay, one of the things that terrorists want, right, is actually they need to get this international recognition or international fame, I would put, so that people, it strikes fear in people's or government's hearts. I think that's the whole idea. Okay, how can we individually play a part? Later on, we'll go to this. What are the forms of terrorism? Okay, I can explain. How has it impacted Singapore? Very good. I think when there was a terror attack, if you still remember the Mas Selamat, or maybe you don't remember this guy, okay, I'll give you some links to read about him. Okay, so this guy, what happened is there was actually mistrust. There was a lot of mistrust among Malays, because this Mas Selamat is a Malay, okay, and other races, because he wanted to bomb the Yishun MRT, and it was a real, there were real plans to bomb Yishun MRT. Okay, what are the precautionary measures that the government has in place? You must remember the responsive measures, okay, the protective measures, all right, and the rest, the RRP, okay, right, protective measures. Okay, so this was another one. I think that terrorist attacks are very violent. Okay, you can read it yourself. How concerned? This is the one that's very important. Can you see that there's two stars there? List 3 possible political impact. So all these were from your answers, and I think it is quite good answers. So that is why I thought that I must just snip and take it here. Okay, 3 possible economic impact. This is very, very important. I thought a lot of you gave very good answers. So some of the good answers, if I could just highlight, is actually okay, xenophobia will not be economic. Xenophobia should be social. What is xenophobia? Xenophobia is the fear of others. So I think this was Ruan's answer. Be careful about it. Okay, now moving on. Okay, what are possible economic effects? Okay, so very much so, if let's say your country is a tourist destination, tourism will be affected. So imagine like Bali, when Bali had a bomb in 2015, there was a lot of people were scared to go to Bali, so that was one of it. Okay, a lot of you talk about there will be many loss of lives. It's not economic. Okay, it is social. Okay, but a lot of it's correct. Deter foreign investment. I thought that was a very good answer, because what do you need? Okay, what are investors looking out for? They are looking out for stability, right? That's the reason why Singapore, despite COVID, non-COVID, we are still very popular to foreign investments, because we create that stability. Now, if you have a terror attack every once in a while, then there is always this fear that my investments might not be safe. Okay, so if there is no investment, there is no jobs, and if there's no jobs, my standard of living will decrease. All right, now moving on to the last bits. List 3 possible social impacts of terrorist attacks, and these are all the different social impacts. Okay, this is a very good word to use. Likewise, there's not xenophobia. I would say also stereotypes. I think we learned about stereotypes in issue 2, right? Stereotypes, right? We learned about that. And I like number 12 also, tension between different people, victims of psychological effects possible. All right. Okay, so moving on. Okay, what are the strategies? Just now we look at it. So some of the strategies is have effective border controls. You're right. Okay, protect religious places. Yeah, a lot of the time religious places are the ones that gets attacked. Okay, remember we said about protective measure, complex networks of cameras. Yeah, you're right. Look at number 9. We have this. We have the SG Secure app, right? Have apps to quickly report suspicious behavior. And this SG Secure is perhaps one of the best examples that you can write in your essay. Okay. Now moving on. So this is what governments can do, and below is literally about world organizations. And what can world organizations do? I would say, okay, look at number 3 though. Look at the one in red. Give terrorism organization the recognition of a political party, so that they don't resort to violence, and take seriously and be given a chance, for a fair chance to be voted in. So I think this person has an impression of the terrorist group wants more political belief possible. I think this is a very good example of what the IRA, which is a terrorist group, actually demanded in Ireland. Okay, but very rare and few lah. Okay, most of the terrorist groups, they don't really care about a political party. They just want to prove their point. Okay, so may not really happen, but it had happened in Ireland. Okay, answers 11 is very, very good. Okay, answers 11 is very good. When I give to you the answers later on, take note of the one that is in red. Okay, one of the things about what world organization is obviously the keyword collaboration. Okay, because I think for you to catch a terrorist, what is needed is information. Okay, all right, now combination of reasons. Okay, I want to do one more SRQ, and then we can call it a day. So a bit more. Okay, I thought that look at Dunyan paper, everybody. If you have the paper, look at Dunyan paper. This is the one. So look at SRQ 6 and SRQ 7. Okay, this is not easy. Okay, Dunyan in 2018, they set about a question about self-radicalization. So if you don't know what is self, okay, what if let's say in the O level you do not know what is the meaning of self-radicalization, right? Okay, you can see here there's a definition, right? It refers to an individual teaching, and then there is this flawed interpretation of the topic. Okay, and it poses a problem for every government around the world because they take things in their own hands. Now for this, the question that was asked is, in your opinion, how can self-radicalization be managed? So so if you get this kind of terms, right, in the O level, and oh dear, what is it? How can I answer, right? Don't panic. always remember that when it comes to strategies, right, because here is, it just asks you, how can be managed? So it can be managed in straight away, you think about the sphere of influence, right? You think about what the government can do, what the community can do, and what the individual can do. I think it's upside down, sorry, should be. Sorry. Okay, what the individual can do, what the community can do, and what the government can do. Correct? Okay, so always don't be scared about when you have vocab or terms that you don't understand. All right, so let's take a look at your friend's answer. Okay, in my opinion, self-radicalization can be managed by having proper education in schools. That is one of it. So this is the what. Correct. So you have this in your Microsoft Word that I sent just now. In schools, teachers are able to educate. So this is the examples here. The one in blue are the examples. Teachers educate students on the negative and harmful impact. They're able to look out for symptoms and student, okay, so until here. All right. So where is the link? The link is in green. Students gain awareness produced by terrorism, and there are also preventive measures. Students are able to clear misconceptions and educate. The link is okay, but it's still it's still weak in my perception. Okay. Now, what does education do? Specifically, education is supposed to, education is supposed to change or empower people. Empower people to do what? It is to make the correct decisions. Okay, is to make the correct decisions. So use the education is to change and empower to make the correct decisions. It is also used to change the mindset. It is also to understand better. So this could be your link. Okay, students are able to clear misconception. What kind of misconception? So this one is elaborate a little bit more about this misconception. Okay, Ken, so whoever did this essay, just take note about that. Okay, another way is very good. I think this is a very good example. This one, okay, proper screening of websites. Okay, the government can block websites. Yeah, that is what the government does. Okay, certain websites, unless you go to, what do I mean? Oh, is it dark internet or something internet? Yeah, where it's apparently not filtered. Okay, block websites that promote terrorist technologies. They can screen websites. So these are the examples still. And let's take a look at the link. This will reduce self-radicalization as individuals will not be influenced by comments and content online. Very good. And if they are not influenced, okay, they will not become targets of extremist group. Okay, so just sharpen a bit your answer. All right. Okay. For this question, last question for tonight. Oh, it's 10 o'clock, almost 10. Okay. Do you think that the governments have a more crucial role? So this is very interesting. When you have this kind of question, what is the most important thing is for you not to answer it this way. Straight away, what you should be doing is, do you think that the governments have a more crucial role? You're not going to weigh. Weighing actually takes that 7 to the 8th mark. Okay. So what you do is just explain it such that, okay, the government has a crucial role. Okay, the individual also has a crucial role. All right, have it such that you have paragraph 1, paragraph 2, oops, handwriting, sorry, and paragraph 3 is the one that you do the conclusion, where you answer the question here. Okay, so what you do is you actually just tell me the government has a crucial role, the individual has a crucial role, and what is your conclusion? That's it. Okay, so I think just be very clear about your writing. You don't have to answer. Okay, I know we always say answer the question, but for this essay question, if you were to write the government has a more crucial role, you are already going to put yourself in the danger of writing the whole entire paragraph only through the eyes of the government, and you won't get the marks. So just write it first, wait, or answer the question at the last bit. Okay. And if you look at the answer here, just a very quick one. Last bit. Okay, individuals play an important role. Okay, so here the student actually said something about in the age where technology is very advanced, everyone can be seeing devices. They also have to be very vigilant. They also have to install anti-malware. Okay, very good. All right, they should be vigilant to spot scams and everything. So this is individual's perspective. Okay, very good answer. Next bit, the government also plays an important role in managing cybersecurity. So this particular person, remember one particular example. Okay, you need this kind of very concrete example, especially when it comes to about the government's role. The government also can play very collaborative industry partners or Institute of Higher Learning. The only thing that's missing is a bit more evidence here. You need more concrete evidence as what the government does, what the government's initiative is. Okay, so you must read up about that. All right, and then the link here, it is a weak link. Okay, so need to improve on that. Then look, let's look at the conclusion. However, I feel that individuals have a more important role, even though the government has implemented, it's still up to the individual. Possible, this is a very possible answer. Okay, but because your second paragraph is not so strong, then you do not get the marks for conclusion. Just take note of that. Okay. Now, in here, in this particular entire note, I've also given, can you see this? Last bit, this is what the government has done. So you must make sure that you have very concrete evidence of what the government does. Okay, so I'm going to put the answer here so we can take a look at it, the role of individual. But for Danyan, they chose that the government plays an important role. And the reason is because they have access to resources that can manage security challenges, all that. Okay, so this is, I'll send this entire file and this entire link, okay, to Miss Tan as well as to my class, and you can actually just read it. Okay, these are all compilation of your own answers. Okay, all right. Any questions? Anything you want to ask me? A quick one? No, nothing. All right. So I am. Let me start record.